How far advanced are these talks, and do you expect any action in the coming weeks?
Well, I keep asking. I mean, you know, we have observed and witnessed an extraordinary mobilization recently. Number of condemnation, outrage. We even had last week a statement from the 15 member of the Security Council, which nowadays is rare, so it was definitely welcome. My call is make sure that this outrage and these words be now translated into action. So I wish to be clear. Obviously, I am still hopeful that we will find a pathway to prevent this law to be implemented. But by answering this, I do not know to which extent it is just wishful thinking.
Thank you. Bisan.
Thank you very much. Bisan Quick with Al Jazeera Arabic. I have two quick questions. I mean, we have this legislation in the Knesset, but now in the U.S. we have a new administration and a new composition in the U.S. Congress. And UNRWA had been attacked by many Republican lawmakers in the past. How concerned are you with this new administration that further measures might be taken here in the U.S. Towards UNRWA, either in Congress or by the new administration itself? And the second question is, you mentioned that UNRWA should be part of a political solution, a two-state solution. I mean, how viable is a political and two-state solution at this point, in your opinion, especially with statements that we have heard in Israel about the annexation of the West Bank?
I will just comment because I don't have a proper answer, I guess. You know, we are in a new situation. Obviously, it's an understatement. In every new situation, we might see also new opportunities. To which extent is it realistic to talk about a two-state solution? For the time being, the two-state solution remains the international community and United Nations position about how to promote a solution on the Palestinian question in the region. We hear also that the new administration has made promoting peace a priority in the region. When we talk about peace, we talk also about normalization. And when we talk about normalization, we also hear that the two-state solution remains an important condition for any lasting normalization. So if you put all these elements together, I believe that would this be the pathway, that in this pathway, UNRWA would have certainly a positive role to play to make it happen if there is a firm and genuine desire to once for all address the Palestinian question. All right, and the second question was what?
Two-state solution.
Sorry.
First question, actually, it was about the new administration.
So it was, I answered. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Maggie, then Deji, then Abdelhamid.
Hello, Mr. Lazzarini. It's Margaret Bashir with Voice of America. We know courts move slowly. We know the international community moves slowly. As Edie said, you've got less than 3 months now before this legislation is likely to go into effect. So what are your plans for operating in Gaza and the West Bank after that? I mean, do you think you can still work come January? Have you spoken to Egypt or Jordan about them giving you some access into those territories, or would it be completely out of the question for you to continue to operate once the legislation goes into effect?
The simple and short answer is we will be operating until the day we cannot operate anymore. So our determination is not to give into our mandate to deliver services, and we will deliver the services until we are forced to stop the services. When will it be? I hope never. Now, what will happen after the 90 days, I do not have a straight answer. I think very few of us know. If we have a no-contact policy in a place like Gaza, that means we will not be able to deconflict or coordinate any of our movement. So it will make operation extraordinarily challenging, but it will not prevent, at least at the beginning, staff operating in a given shelter in Gaza to continue to provide primary health care. For example, they might be prevented once stocks are completely exhausted and we are not able to bring back the stock. So there will not be normally a clear-cutting point, but after 90 days, what we hear for the time being is that that will put an end to the no-contact policy. And the question is, how will the no-contact policy be interpreted? What does it mean to start with international staff? Can we still, yes or not, apply and get a visa? I don't have an answer for this as of today.
Thank you. Okay. Deji Abdulhamid and then Evelyn.
Hi, Mr. Lazzarini, Xu Deji with China Central Television. Two quick questions. First, have you talked to Ambassador Danoon of Israel directly? Because today he talked to us, he said that he urged you to resign. Do you think that would make a difference? And secondly, you said the request from Israel to dismantle UNRWA, it's a political motivated. It's not really humanitarian or other things. So can you remind us what's the importance of UNRWA politically speaking and why Israel wants to dismantle UNRWA politically speaking? Thank you.
I did not have a bilateral meeting with Ambassador Danoon. He made a call this morning at the Fourth Committee asking me to resign in shame. Basically, my answer to this is that if my person would really make a difference, this is certainly something I should envisage. But I don't think it is my person which is attacked. It is my function. It is a Commissioner General which is primarily targeted today, and it is a part of this broader campaign to delegitimize the agency and UNRWA. This leads me to the second part of your question. Why is it political? The objective is to strip the Palestinian from the refugee status and also to unilaterally change the parameters for a political solution. It's a way to undermine the future aspiration of the Palestinian for self-determination. It's a way to undermine and to bury once for all the two-state solution. We have also seen that it's not just UNRWA which has been targeted. Any voices in the region supporting the Palestinian Authority, supporting the pathway of a two-state solution, started to be phased out. We have seen it with some UN agencies. We have seen it even with a member state whose diplomats have been asked to leave. And also, and here I was clear also with the Fourth Committee and the General Assembly last week, it is completely false to believe that if the agency stops the provision of its services, that this will end the status of the Palestinian refugees. The status of the Palestinian refugees is confirmed through the resolution, GA Resolution 194. UNRWA has been created later on to provide services to the refugees. Hence, the right of return remains enshrined in the Resolution 194, and it has nothing to do with the provision of services of UNRWA. But we have heard, once the legislative text has been adopted, number of politicians who were driving this text, saying this is a chance in a generation to put an end once for all to refugee status and also to victimhood.
Okay, Abdelhamid, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Lazzarini. Abdelhamid Sayan from the Arabic Daily, Al-Quds Al-Arabi. Many of the questions I want to raise had already been raised, especially asking you to resign by Danny Danon. And my question is about the day after. Are you prepared to put a plan to cover the shortages in financial support to UNRWA once we see the new administration cutting off completely the support for UNRWA, and of course some of the Israeli supporters also might do the same. So what is your plan to fill the gap in the budgetary crisis you might be facing? And my second question, would that affect the operation of UNRWA and the other duty stations like Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria? How is the operation will be affected by this Israeli decision? Thank you.
Thank you. You know, my first objective right now is to safeguard the agency and its ability to operate through a number of, I would say, political, diplomatic intervention, because we have to, and that was my ask to the member states, use all your influence to make sure that these laws are not implemented. And once these laws are put on hold, to shield the role of the agency in any political transition. But at the same time, you're right, and haven't talked about finance. You were used to hear me talking about finance until now, but our financial situation remains very dire. I still do not have the funding to end the year, so I still have 45 days to find the financial support to be able to pay the salary of our 30,000 staff across the region. Now, the beginning of next year, the expectation, the forecast is grim, because the main donor, which has been the United States, used always to contribute at the beginning of January and help the agency to go through the first quarter. This year, we won't have a contribution of coming from the US. Anyway, as you know, contributions have been frozen minimum until March next year, and indeed we have absolutely no indication that they will resume anytime soon. Then we have also a number of donors who are going through austerity budget in Europe, which will also impact the level of contribution to the agency. So I'm particularly indeed concerned about the financial situation as from the end of the year and beyond. Now, how is this legislative text impacting the neighboring country? It's not impacting the neighboring country because it does not apply to the neighboring country. But there can be some side effect. It all depends on how donors countries react in the future. If they have the feeling that the agency cannot operate anymore in Gaza and in the West Bank, will they still continue to contribute to the agency while the agency maintains full activity in the neighboring countries? I hope so. We aim at that, but I cannot answer with certainty.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with Evelyn, Yvonne, Sharife, and then Stefano. Evelyn, please.
Hello, Commissioner. I'm Evelyn Leopold, Globetrotter Media, Past Blue, Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists, and I have a couple questions for you. The first is, do you still have an operation in Gaza considering the violence? And if so, how do you get more, how over the last month have you gotten more facilities, equipment, and whatnot into Gaza and the West Bank, considering the objections to you existing? And I have another question after that, which is, you calculate the number of refugees and all their descendants, which is a very large number that are somehow affiliated with you. Does that indicate a right of return? And thank you for your briefing. I've learned a lot today.
Thank you. Yes, we continue to operate in Gaza, but as you know, our operational space is very, very narrow. It's Gaza. It's one of the most dangerous places to operate. You have also been regularly briefed on how harrowing the situation is there. Some have also described this type of, post-apocalyptic dystopian horror colleagues are witnessing, especially in the north of Gaza. You have also been briefed about how hunger has deepened and that famine, especially in the north, is also at the corner. You have also been briefed about how little entered into Gaza in October. October 1 was one of the worst months in terms of humanitarian supply into the Gaza Strip. I think only the first month of the war had, in average, less trucks going into the Strip. So there is a race against the clock. I have also repeatedly said that if there is a political will, we can bring supply at level. We have seen also with the polio campaign that if there is a political will, we can make it a success. And it has been a success in this dark environment. We continue to operate in shelters. We continue to provide 16,000 consultations a day through our mobile clinic and health center. And whenever there is a distribution going on with partners, our staff are being mobilized. In the West Bank, we are not necessarily involved in a humanitarian response per se. We are more implementing our core activities. Our schools are open. We have 50,000 kids in our school. We continue to provide primary health care consultation. Your second part of the question was?
Right of return.
Yeah. The right of return. Sorry?
It was more on the registration.
Yes. There are two things. One, we have in UNRWA about 5.9 million people registered as refugees. It does not mean that there are 5.9 million Palestinian refugees in the region. As an agency, we are servicing about 550,000 children, girls and boys, across 700 schools across the region. We are servicing about 2 million people when it comes to primary health care. We are providing food assistance or cash, depending on where, to about 2 million people. And we have a social safety net for the poorest among the poor for about 400,000 people. So we are far from servicing the 5.9 million people. I keep also being asked, why is the statue being given from one generation to the other one? This is different from UNHCR. again, this is false. You can be a second, third, or fourth generation of refugees with UNHCR if there is no lasting solution. Look at the Western Sahara, look at Afghanistan, look at even Somalia. Here we are talking already about 50, 40, 30 years, depending on the context I was referring to. The right of return is a political right which needs to be addressed in a political solution. So UNRWA as an agency has absolutely nothing to do with this question. Is the right of return a recognition of what happened in 46, 48? Is the right of return a compensation? Does it go beyond? This needs to be addressed politically. UNRWA has absolutely nothing to do with this.
Thank you. Let's go to Yvonne, Sharif, and Stefan. And please limit your questions to one question for time reasons. Please, Yvonne.
Okay. Commissioner Lazzarini, Yvonne Moriarty, News. Israel has long accused UNRWA of failing to address its concerns over what they call infiltration by Islamic Jihad and Hamas amongst its ranks, something you've persistently rejected. But I'm wondering, given the point that we're at today, is there anything that UNRWA could have done differently over the past decade to avoid where we are today? Or do you think it was inevitable given the political context that you described? And just quickly on funding gap, you mentioned that you expect American funding to dry up next year. Has any member state approached you to say that they will plug that gap for you? Thank you.
Well, let me start with the second question. Usually member states never approach you to say we will fill the gap. Never, ever. So they might wait you to be on your knees or strangulated, and they might come to save you, but never, ever in advance. So no, the short answer is no. It is true that we keep, the main argument to undermine, to delegitimize the agency are all these accusations of collusion with Hamas and infiltration by Hamas and all these allegations. I have been very clear on this one. I acknowledge that we are operating in a very complicated environment, deeply emotional, deeply divided. So there is no zero risk, but as an agency, we will apply the zero tolerance. We are also an agency which basically is a human development agency, and I'm not like a state having police or intelligence services working for us. So we heavily rely on the member states. Now, one way to rely on the member states, and this is a practice the agency has put in place over the last 15, 20 years, is to regularly share the list of the staff to the host country, which means in the region we have shared with the Palestinian Authority, with a neighboring country, but also with Israel. Now, one of the recommendations of the Catherine Colonna report was you should share it more frequently. So instead of sharing it on a yearly basis, we share it now on a quarterly basis. Now, having said that, we keep having allegation and allegation and allegation. When it comes to the use of our premises, for example, we keep hearing that the Hamas, Palestinian armed group, but also during this war, the Israeli army have used our premises for military operation. Today, 90% of the Gaza Strip is under evacuation order. It's a combat zone. It's very difficult for us to check what is true or not true. But I repeatedly not only condemn, which is obvious, but ask that a board of inquiry be put in place, and I really hope that this board of inquiry will be put in place to investigate, in fact, all these allegations. I keep also saying that, we are in a war of narrative, there are different type of narrative, the war of disinformation. That's the reason why it is also so important that international journalists be present in Gaza. We have relied until now on absolutely heroic work done by Palestinian journalists. But when we talk about, polarization and different narrative across the world, the presence of international journalists is absolutely key. And I really wish you would be able to be present just to double check basically also what you are hearing. What would we have done differently? I think it's too early to answer this question because of course you ask a question about the legacy of an agency across the last few decades. But again, I think reviews like the one we had from Catherine Colonna, coming with a certain number of recommendations. Our general observation was to say our systems are more robust when it comes to handle neutrality than any other UN agency, but because of the complexity of the region, because of how deeply divided the region is, and because also of our footprint, because the particularity of an agency like ours is that most of our staff come also from the community that we are serving. So bearing in mind all this element, more can be done, and this is the reason why we have fully embraced the recommendation of this review. But I think in the future, if we have a board of inquiry looking into all these allegations, they might also come with some of the lessons that we will have to, digest, process, and certainly also implement. My last point is we keep hearing about, the list of 100 staff being submitted to us, being accused to be armed militant. These are, again, allegations we are taking very seriously. I have written back. I've asked for more information about this. The OIOS also has been assessed, but until today, we haven't received any more information than a list of names on a paper, which makes any possible investigation extraordinarily difficult.
Thank you, Sharifa. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lazzarini. I'm Sharifa Chitin from Anadolu Agency. As you know, the Gaza Health Ministry has announced the recent death toll in Gaza to be almost 44,000 now. And the United Nations has defined Gaza to be a sea of rubble. So as someone who has access to day-to-day developments in Gaza, do you have any estimate as to what the real number of casualties may be? And if I may, I know that the United Nations does not label atrocities unless there's a court decision about it. But with all that you are witnessing, how would you have described the situation if you were not a UN official yourself? Thank you.
Shall I answer the second part of the question? It is true that we speak about 43,000 officially, at least from the Ministry of Health in Gaza. It has been a war of all possible superlative. It's not just the 43,000 people killed. We heard from the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights that 70% were children and women. We have seen the unprecedented number of journalists killed, the unprecedented number of health workers killed, the unprecedented level of destruction, and you heard me during every briefing, the unprecedented number of United Nations staff having been killed. Today we talk about 243. Is this number real? Are there more? Yes, there are certainly more. They are the one unaccounted for in the rubble. How many of them? I have no idea, but most likely more than what has been accounted for, the 43,000. And then we certainly will have to look at what is the excess mortality in Gaza due to the war, due to the extraordinary hardship, inhuman living conditions, subhuman living conditions that people are going through, amplified by hunger, amplified by the disease and the extraordinary unsanitary living condition people are in. Kids are living in piles of garbage and sewage water. So there is certainly an excess mortality which also needs to be measured. I think we have described the situation in Gaza with almost all possible words. Sometimes I'm just wordless or speechless. I don't know anymore what to use to qualify it. Does massacre, is massacre the right word? I don't know. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the suffering inflicted to these communities. I think you heard many of us describing how people are just waiting death, trying to push back, hoping, some are hoping that they will be killed. Others will do whatever is possible to avoid to die under an airstrike from disease or from hunger. People are living in pilot automatic mode, in really subhuman living condition. We heard at the beginning of the war the expression human animal. That's how people start to feel. They have lost everything, and they feel that they have lost also their dignity. So how to describe this? We are trying to be as we try to report as our colleagues bring the story to us, but I think even talking about, there have been massacre, but talking about massacre might not make, how do you say, leur faire honneur, I don't know how to translate in English right now, but it might be too narrow.
Thank you. Stefano, last question, and then we have to let the Commissioner General and his team go.
Thank you, Mr. Lazzarini. Stefano Vaccara, La Voce New York, Ital Press. Well, it is important. I mean, I understand your job is to try everything to save the agency, to save UNRWA. But even more important is to save the life of the Palestinian people in Gaza in this moment, even before the agency. So what exactly is your plan B in 2.5 months for that? And did you take in consideration the possibility that people working for UNRWA, even with the tools, with the cars, with whatever they have, could work for other agencies of the UN in the field? I just asked the Israeli ambassador and said, do you have anything against a person, a former employee of UNRWA working for UNICEF or WFP? And from his answer, for sure, was a no. I mean, it was like, so this is what this, and then last thing, we all know, you know, I know, all the people here in the room know that the only person in this moment that could save UNRWA is President Trump. He's going to be there on January 20th. Are you going to try to contact him before to save the agency?
First of all, I agree with you. UNRWA is just a vehicle. What we need to safeguard is the right of the Palestinian refugees and the right of the Palestinian refugees to access education, to access primary health, to access life, basically. So this is the main priority today. Now, UNRWA has been the vehicle of the international community to respond to their plight. Now, if one member state decides we do not want UNRWA anymore and we do not want the vehicle of the international community, and at the same time says we do not want the Palestinian Authority. Question is, what does this member state want? The obligation goes back on its shoulder. And this question...
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? This is the Fire and Safety Unit. The Fire and Safety Unit is conducting a fire drill for your floor. This is a drill. This is a drill. Upon hearing this message, please assemble at the vicinity of stairway E, situated on the southeast side of the building.
Okay. So,
may I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? This is the Fire and Safety Unit. The Fire and Safety Unit is conducting a fire drill for your floor. This is a drill. This is a drill. Upon hearing this announcement, please assemble at the vicinity of stairway E, situated on the southeast side of the building.
okay. So,
I don't believe in conspiracy theory, but... Okay, maybe just shortly to complete on this. So you have to ask the question of the Plan B to Israel if Israel does not want the vehicle that the international community has decided will be the one to ensure access, to address the plight of the Palestinian refugees through providing education and primary health. Your question is about other UN agencies. There is no UN agencies which has any know-how, expertise, institutionally also, to provide education to hundreds of thousands of girls and boys at primary and secondary school level. For your last question, do I intend? The short answer is yes.
thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner General. Thank you, everybody.
We have to reassemble now.